The courtroom was quiet. So quiet you could almost hear the soft tick of the clock on the wall above the judge's bench and the nervous rustle of papers in lawyers' hands. The air itself felt thick, laden with years of secrets, betrayals, and broken hearts that finally culminated in this moment. Then, without warning, the heavy wooden doors creaked open. The sound echoed through the hall, sharp and haunting, sending shivers through everyone inside. All eyes turned, and there she was, Meri Brown. Her pace was slow, measured, and firm, but her face whispered a tale of weariness and strength. Her eyes burned, ablaze with determination. But behind that blaze was undeniable suffering, the suffering of one who has been ignored, dismissed, and shoved aside for far too long. She wasn't merely entering a courtroom that morning, she was entering history. She was not merely another woman struggling to be heard for her truth. She was a voice silenced for years, a tale that lay hidden behind Robyn's tears and Kody's excuses. Today, though, she was finished being silent. Today, she was prepared to be heard. The crowd, a combination of journalists, family acquaintances, and nosy bystanders, strained forward, whispering her name. Some gasped, others gazed with wide eyes. They all understood. This was not going to be a typical trial. This was going to be a burst of unadulterated truth, and no one was prepared for what was about to happen. At the defense table was Kody Brown. His characteristic confident stance was absent. Instead, he rocked back and forth in his chair uncomfortably, his fists tightly gripped together, as if clinging to the remaining shreds of his composure. His blonde curls, once a badge of charm and charisma, were messy, disheveled, like a man who had lost his hold on anything. On the opposite side, Robyn Brown leaned forward, frantically whispering to her lawyer. Her face was white, but her lips shook with desperation. It was obvious that she was afraid. Afraid of what Meri would say, afraid of what realities would be exposed in the presence of cameras, reporters, and the whole world. In the gallery, Christine Brown sat stiffly, her hands folded tightly in her lap, her knuckles white. She wasn't here to enjoy anyone's downfall. She was here because she had lived through the same pain, and a part of her knew today, she would hear her own story told through Meri's voice. Next to her was Janelle, subdued, calm, but with a look that belied years of suppressed rage. She said nothing. Her silence was deafening. It was the silence of a woman who had tolerated, who had waited, but who had seen enough. The air was thick. Finally, the judge's gavel sounded like thunder. This court is now in session. Each individual in the room stood still. The sound of the gavel echoed through the courtroom like a warning bell. Everyone stiffened. This wasn't about legal documents or contracts. It wasn't about who signed what, or who was legally married to whom. This was about wounds. The kind of wounds that don't show on the skin, but are festering in the soul. And those wounds were going to be ripped wide open. Meri stepped forward, her heels hitting the ground in time with the pounding of her heart. With each step, memories came flooding back. Memories of the early years when she had believed in love, family, in a dream that offered oneness, but brought betrayal. Memories of seeing her husband's love fade away, not into the sky, but right into another woman's arms. Memories of being instructed to hold on as the world around her fell apart. She arrived at her seat, back straight, head held high. For years she had been tagged as the quiet one, the loyal one, the woman who remained even when remaining shattered her. But today she wasn't present to remain silent. She wasn't present to play the position of the quiet, supportive wife. Today she was present to speak. The energy in the courtroom changed, as if the very walls were steeling themselves for a blow. The lawyers fidgeted with their papers. The reporters raised their pens, and even the bailiff stiffened his shoulders. Kody dodged her eyes, but it was in vain. He could sense her eyes boring into him like flames. For once he was not in charge. For once his charm, his orations, his perpetual rationalizations were useless. And then, in silence, Meri spoke her first words. They were low but even, shaking with feeling but driven by determination. I have been silent for too long. They stood suspended in the air, heavy and irrefutable. They were more than a statement, both a warning and a declaration of war upon decades of manipulation, gaslighting, and marginalization. Gasps circulated around the courtroom. Christine had her hand in front of her mouth. Janelle's eyes became soft, tears poised to drop. Even Robyn blushed quickly, as though attempting to grasp the reality that Meri, always reserved, always unassuming, was walking into combat with flames burning in her veins. Meri went on, her voice intensifying with each sentence. I was told to be quiet, smile, and settle for less than I was worthy of. I was told love was sacrifice. Even if sacrifice was me. I believed it. I lived it. I bore it. Today, I will no longer be invisible. The room was locked, suspended in shock and wonder. No one dared to interrupt. No one even dared to breathe too loudly. The judge leaned forward, his face serious now, understanding the weight of the moment. He did not cut her off. He could not. This was not merely testimony. This was history being forged in front of him. Kody shifted uncomfortably in his seat again, his expression venomous with bottled anger. But for the first time ever, he couldn't interrupt, couldn't take charge, couldn't submerge her words with his. Because the truth was louder, and that truth had just entered the light. Everyone was aware. What followed would not only reveal the fissures of the Brown family, it would blow the whole foundation to smithereens. The courtroom was no longer simply a venue of law. It had turned into a battleground of hearts, a theater of pain, and a field where silence was finally breaking. And it all started with Meri Brown, the woman who was once forgotten, now the voice that could no longer remain silent. The courtroom fell silent. It was as if the whole room was keeping its breath, anticipating the moment that would alter everything. The bailiff shouted out, clear and authoritative, "Meri Brown, please step down to the witness stand." The words resonated, reflecting off the wood-lined panels of courtroom walls. Heads swiveled. Some from the gallery scooted forward, their eyes fixed on Meri as if they realized something of history was about to happen before their very eyes. Meri rose. For an instant her knees buckled, but she willed herself to stand. Each step towards the witness stand seemed like a mile. She wasn't merely walking across the room. She was walking across years of betrayal, loneliness, and hurt. The heels of her shoes hit the floor with a resonant sound that was like a drumbeat of defiance. As she approached the stand, the bailiff extended the Bible. She touched her hand to it, her fingers shaking. "Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?" Her voice broke for a split second, but she caught herself and answered firmly, "I do." As she sat, she tweaked the microphone. Her fingers shook, but her gaze was clear. She glanced around the courtroom, first at Kody, who sat stiff, his mouth clamped into a thin, seething line, then at Robyn, whose face was tight and white, her fingers clutching her lawyer's arm. Then finally, her gaze softened as it settled on Christine and Janelle, both of whom gazed at her with wordless encouragement. For the first time in a long time, Meri didn't feel alone. She took a deep breath, her voice soft but powerful enough to silence the whispers in the gallery. "I spent decades believing in a dream that turned into a nightmare." The courtroom shifted, reporters scribbled notes, cameras clicked, and even the judge leaned forward, curious. Meri's voice trembled as she continued. "I gave my heart, my loyalty, my youth. I created a life for a man who promised us unity and love. And what did I receive back? Betrayal, silence, loneliness." Gasps ran through the courtroom. Christine's hand covered her mouth, tears welling in her eyes. Janelle hung her head, jaw clenched with emotion. But Meri did not stop. She could not. The words had been trapped within her for so long, and now they poured out like water breaking against a dam. "I was Kody's first wife. I was there for him when he had nothing. I believed in him. I stood by him. But when it counted, when our marriage needed him, he was absent. He wasn't there for me. He wasn't defending our love. Instead, he was creating something new with Robyn." She looked at Robyn, and the whole room seemed to stand still for a moment. "I sat here while you took my place. Not only legally, but emotionally. I was discarded like I didn't exist. Like all the years I sacrificed meant nothing." Robyn's lips quivered. She spoke something to her lawyer, but the voice was too low to be heard. The courtroom cameras panned in close, catching every twitch of emotion on her face. Mary's voice increased in strength. Years I begged for scraps of attention. Years I attempted to repair something that was already broken. I stayed even when staying hurt me, because I believed in family, because I believed in him. She looked at Kody now, her gaze stabbing. He winced, attempting to turn away, but her words held him in place. You preached unity, you preached love, you preached standing together, but in secret, you left us. You left me in a marriage where I wasn't loved, wasn't valued, wasn't even seen. Do you know how that feels, Kody? To be in a house full of people and still feel utterly alone. Her voice broke, and for the first time, a single tear cascaded down her cheek. She didn't brush it away. She allowed it to fall. The silence in the room was oppressive. Even the judge appeared to be moved, his eyes becoming softer as he heard. I stayed silent for years. I thought if I didn't speak, maybe things would get better. Maybe he would come back. Maybe he would see me again. But instead, my silence only gave him power. It told him it was okay to ignore me. It told him I didn't matter. But today, I will not stay silent. Today, I say it out loud. I mattered. I mattered then, and I matter now. Christine let out a sob, covering her mouth with her hand. Janelle reached over, touching her arm gently, both women clearly shaken by Mary's courage. Even some of the strangers in the gallery had tears in their eyes. Meri straightened her back, her voice now rising with power. This is not about a marriage. This is about years of being silenced, years of being dismissed. I was told to settle for less than I deserved, to shrink myself, to make way for another woman. But I will not shrink anymore. I will not settle for less. My truth deserves to be heard. Her words clung in the air like thunder, resonating in the hearts of all who were there. Kody's face turned bright red. His lawyer whispered something in his ear, telling him to remain calm. But his body told another story. He was enraged, not only at what she said, but at being unable to silence. For the first time, his control was slipping right out of his hands. And Meri saw it. Her last words on the witness stand struck more forcefully than any piece of legal evidence. I was loyal to a man who shattered me, but I will not let that be the end of my story. Today I reclaim my voice. Today I reclaim my value. And no one, not Kody, not Robyn, not anyone, can silence me ever again. The room was quiet. The reporters wrote frantically, recording every sentence. Christine wiped away her tears, speaking softly. At last, Janelle nodded, tears welling in her eyes. Meri had done more than testify. She had declared war against the silence that had held her captive for decades. And for the first time, the world was listening. The tension within the courtroom was excruciating. Pens scratched frantically against notepad. Cameras snapped every few seconds. And the crowd hardly breathed. The silence wasn't void. It was oppressive, suffocating, full of expectation of what Meri Brown was going to tell them next. She hunched forward in the witness stand, her voice firm now, driven by years of silence building up to a tempest. Your Honor, this isn't about a marriage. This isn't about two people losing love. This is about control, about power, about a man who preached love and unity, but tore down the very family he said he was leading. There were gasps that ran around the room. The judge hastily raised his gavel to silence the murmurs, but the stun had already seeped into every part of the courtroom. Meri focused her attention squarely on Kody, her eyes fixed on his, unwavering. Her finger quivered as she indicated across the room, but her voice was firm enough to cause even the bailiff to straighten. You made us suffer, Kody. You made our children feel abandoned. And when tragedy hit, when Garrison's death broke this family apart, you weren't there. You chose Robyn. You chose yourself. The room exploded into commotion. The gallery gasped, cameras on reporters flashed, and even Christine's sob was heard above the bedlam. The judge slammed his gavel wildly. Order in the court. Order. It took almost a minute for the muttering to die down. But it had already been done. Everyone heard it. Everyone felt it. Kody's face went red, his jaw clenching as if he wanted to bound out of his seat and defend himself. His lawyer was whispering frantically in his ear, attempting to mollify him, but his hands gripped the edge of the table so hard his knuckles were white. Meri didn't waver. She continued, her voice cutting through the tension like a knife. You crave dominance, Kody, not unity, not love. You employed your words, your so-called faith, to control us. But in the privacy of the home, you were brutal. You left us to bear the hurt. While you constructed a kingdom alongside Robyn, you proclaim yourself a leader of family. Yet what leader leaves his wives? What leader turns deaf ears to his children when they call out for him? The audience stirred again, emotions too strong to contain. Some shook their heads. Others leaned forward with tears in their eyes. This wasn't just testimony. It was a reckoning. Meri's voice dropped lower now, trembling with emotion. I recall nights when I waited up by myself, hoping you would return home. Nights when our children cried for your attention. Do you know what I had to explain to them, Kody? That their daddy was too busy, too exhausted, too preoccupied. But we all knew the truth. You were not too busy. You were with Robyn. You chose her over us. Each time, Robyn dipped her head into her hands, whispering wildly to her lawyer. Her shoulders trembled, but no one was in the mood to offer comfort. The eyes of the gallery were on Meri. And for the first time, the sobbing that poured down her cheeks wasn't a vulnerability. It was a threat. Kody finally lost it. He pounded his fist on the table, his voice bellowing. That's not true. The judge's gavel boomed loudly. Mr. Brown, you will be silent unless spoken to by the court. But it was too late. The explosion had given him away. The courtroom witnessed it. The jury witnessed it. The world witnessing it in the gallery witnessed it. Meri glared at him, her voice rising over his. It is true, Kody. You left us behind. You made your children feel unwanted. And when Garrison passed away, where were you? Where was the father who said he loved his family? You were nowhere. Christine buried her face in her hands, sobbing openly now. Janelle's face was wet with tears. Her lips pressed tight as she shook her head. The pain of losing Garrison hung in the air like a ghost. And Meri's words gave that grief a voice it had never been allowed to have. The courtroom was silent again. But this time, it wasn't anticipation. It was devastation. Every person present felt the weight of the truth pressing down on them. Meri's voice softened, trembling with heartbreak. I'm not saying this because I despise you, Kody. I'm saying this because for years, I believed in you. I believed in the family that you vowed to us. And when it all broke down, I blamed myself. I thought I wasn't good enough. But the real thing is, you never cared enough. Not for me. Not for Christine. Not for Janelle. And not even for your own children when they needed you most. The judge looked at her intently, his face impassive, but his eyes revealing compassion. He wasn't merely hearing testimony. He was hearing a woman who had been silenced for far too long. Kody leaned back, defeated, his skin now pale rather than flushed. He appeared to be a man trapped, with no words left to battle. Meri caught the gallery's eye, her words ringing out with finality. This isn't about revenge. This isn't about hurting him back. This is about truth. And the truth is simple. Kody Brown broke this family. And no matter how hard he tries to cover it up, no matter how many excuses he makes, we all know it. Every single one of us. The room was silent. Not a cough. Not a shuffle. Not even a pen scratching paper. Everyone knew that they had just seen something that would never be forgotten. Kody had been exposed, not only as a husband who had failed his wives, but as a father who had abandoned his children, as a man whose kingdom of love and trust was but smoke and mirrors. And for the first time, the world wasn't hearing his side of the story. They were hearing hers. The air was thick in the courtroom, heavy with all the things Meri had let loose. Her words hung, still alive in everyone's minds, like a bell that couldn't be unrung. Kody sat rigid, white and trapped. Janelle was quietly crying. Christine's face was flushed from weeping. And Robyn Brown, solved herself shaking in her seat. Her hands wound around her lawyer's arm so tightly her knuckles shone white. The judge at last interrupted the silence. Robyn Brown, you may respond. The words came crashing into the room. Everyone looked to Robyn. This was her opportunity to defend her husband. her opportunity to spin the story, her opportunity to maintain the image she and Kody had so long constructed. Robyn rose deliberately, standing from her chair, as if the gravity of the moment could overwhelm her even before she crossed to the stand. She dabbed at tears with shaking hands, her voice shaking as she moved toward the microphone. "Meri is wrong," she started, her voice reed-like, fragile, on the verge of being overwhelmed by the rustle of writing pens and camera clicks. Kody never hurt anyone on purpose. He never left us. He just wanted peace. He wanted harmoniousness. Whatever he did, it was for the best of the family. Her tears flowed freely now, streaming down her face, shimmering under the spotlights of the courtroom. She sniffed, wiping her nose with a tissue, and shook her head like a victim begging to be understood. "Kody gave up more than anyone realizes," she said, her voice cracking. "He bore weights none of us were aware of. Folks think he left them for me, but that is not the case. He was just exhausted. He was struggling to keep everything together, and somehow I was the only place he could turn and be safe." Her words dangled in the air, gentle and pathetic. And for an instant, only an instant, it appeared that they might succeed. A couple of people in the room inclined their heads, sympathetic. The cameras zoomed in on her shaking lips, her watery eyes, but others were unimpressed. Christine leaned forward sharply, her entire body tense. She looked at the judge, her voice hasty. "Your Honor, please, let me speak." The judge paused. "Mrs. Christine Brown, you are not now on the witness list." Christine's eyes began to water, but her voice trembled with resolve. "Please, you need to listen. Everyone needs to hear this." The judge hesitated, for a long moment before nodding unwillingly. "You may testify, but briefly." Christine stood up, her chair scraping harshly against the ground. She stood upright, her hands shaking, her chest heaving with emotion. She went slowly to the middle of the room, her eyes fixed on Robyn. Her voice was unsteady, but it was full of strength. "Meri is correct. Every one of the things she said. I lived it too." Robyn's face went pale. She shook her head, mouthing, "No." But Christine continued. "I left because the hurt was too much. I lingered as long as I could, reassuring myself it would improve, that Kody would come to me again. But he never did. He didn't want to. He chose you, Robyn. He always chose you. And the rest of us, we were left to rot quietly." The crowd gasped once more. Reporters' pens darted across notebooks. The cameras clicked wildly as Christine's words lashed through the courtroom like flashes of lightning. Christine's voice increased in volume. "Power. Don't you dare just stand there and whine about sacrifice, Robyn. Don't you dare pretend like Kody did the brunt of it. The reality is, we did. Meri did. Janelle did. I did. And our kids, did the worst of it. The weight of being overlooked by their own dad." She spun now, tears of anger in her eyes, looking straight at Kody. "Not this family. You deserted it, and you let Robyn assist you in doing it." Robyn winced in pain. She clenched her tissue against her lips, her head shaking wildly. "No, Christine. That isn't true. You don't understand." But Christine interrupted her, her voice growing more angry. "I get it perfectly, Robyn. You always knew what was going on, and you didn't care, because it meant you were the winner. You won the popular vote, and you soaked it up, while the rest of us broke down. You didn't fight for togetherness. You didn't fight for family. You fought for yourself." Her words struck like a sledgehammer. The gallery boiled with so many whispers that the judge had to bang his gavel again and again in an effort to regain order. Order in this courtroom. But the flames had already been kindled. Christine's chest heaved as she turned back toward the stand, her eyes locked on Meri's. And in that silent moment, the years of rivalry, distance and mistrust between them melted away. Christine gave the smallest nod, an unspoken declaration of solidarity. For the first time, Meri wasn't standing alone. Christine's voice softened now, trembling, filled with raw truth. "I remained in that marriage for years, telling myself I had to, telling myself that loyalty was enduring. But it wasn't loyalty. It was terror. terror of losing everything, terror of being judged, terror of speaking out. Meri was braver than me. She lasted longer. She tolerated more. And today, I'm standing with her, because she is in the right, and the truth must be said. Janelle, having been quiet the whole time, wiped her tears, and nodded resolutely. Although she didn't stand, her silence was louder than any affirmation. The dynamics of the courtroom changed. It was no longer Kody and Robyn's arena. It was no longer about their lies, tears, and manipulation. The tables had turned completely. Meri, Christine, and Janelle, the women who had been torn apart, were united in truth. The burden of that unity weighed upon Robyn. Like a hammer, she sobbed harder, her body trembling as she hid her face in her hands. None of them moved to console her. Not even Kody. And in that silence, there was a scream that drowned her tears. The judge's gavel came down once more. Enough. The court will take a short recess. But every person in that room knew. This was not just recess. This was the turning point. Robyn's tears had not worked. Her tail had broken, and Christine's voice, firm, shaking but undeniable, had altered the direction of all things. The recess was over, but the mood of the courtroom was altered now. The walls themselves bore the burden of the truth that Christine had set free. The crowd returned to their seats in hushed fury, the reporters' hands already cramped from the tempest of notes they had scrawled. When the gavel came down once more, the sound was not only for order, it was a reminder that it was all coming to an end. Kody sat hunched over at the defense table, his face pale and tense, lips drawn into a thin, colorless line. His usual fervor was absent, his bravado laid bare. He seemed less a husband, less a father, less a leader, and more of a man trapped by his own reflection. Robyn, standing next to him, was devastated. Her mascara streamed down her cheeks, shoulders heaving as she wiped at tears that refused to relent. Her tissue box was close to being bare. Each breath was raw, frantic, as if her very body sensed the tide had shifted against her. In the front of the room was Meri, Christine, and Janelle, no longer shattered, no longer isolated. The years of hurt and silence were over in this moment. For the first time, they stood together. The power no longer rested with Kody and Robyn. The judge cleared his throat. Prior to moving to closing arguments, this court will hear one additional statement. Mrs. Janelle Brown, you have asked to speak. The crowd gasped. Janelle, the silent witness, the voice of reason, was finally going to speak. She got up, her tears streaming down her face, but her body upright, unwavering. She moved towards the podium, with firm strides. The courtroom hushed save for the only sound of her heels clicking on the floor. At the microphone she didn't cry. She didn't shake. Her tone was low, crisp, controlled. I'm not here to argue. I'm not here to fight. I'm here to tell the truth. She glanced at Kody, her eyes soft with pain, but firm with clarity. I loved you, Kody. I gave years of my life to you. I gave birth to your children. I worked. I made sacrifices. I took on responsibilities when you wouldn't. I thought that was what partnership was about. But what I didn't know was that I wasn't a partner. I was a placeholder. A second choice. A piece of furniture you walked past on your way to Robyn. Kody winced, his jaw clenching, but he said nothing. Janelle's voice gained momentum. You didn't leave your wives. You left your children. Gabriel, Garrison, Savannah. They needed you. They wept for you. They pleaded for your attention. And you weren't there. You can make excuses. You can blame us. You can spin the tale. But the truth will never shift. You failed them. The crowd shifted awkwardly, the words hanging in the air like thunder. Christine and Meri both dropped their heads, weeping openly. Janelle hesitated, her voice breaking, before she spoke the words that split the room in two. And because of your decisions, Kody, Garrison is dead. A silence fell over the courtroom. Even the reporter's pen stilled mid-write. Kody's face contorted, anger and sorrow warring in his body as he stiffened like a man about to burst. But he stayed still. He couldn't, because the words were true. And everyone in the room knew it. Janelle moved back from the microphone, eyes glassy but firm. She didn't glance at Robyn. She didn't glance at the judge. She turned and exited to her seat with dignity, sitting between Meri and Christine, her hands nicely folded in her lap. The silence after that was agonizing, each pulse in the room thudding like a drum. At last the judge leaned forward, his face serious. "Mr. Brown, you have heard the evidence. You have been charged not with crimes in the eyes of the law, but with doing something perhaps even weightier, destroying your own family." Kody raised his chin, but his voice was raspy, shaking. "It's all lies. They've twisted everything. I tried my best. I did what I thought was right. I gave everything I could. But no one trusted him. No more." The judge sighed. "The issue, Mr. Brown, is that your best left devastation in its wake. Your wives, your children, your family, they all sit here shattered by your decisions. And no matter how hard you try to deny it, the truth is not heard by one voice, but by many. And those voices are a single voice of unison against you." Kody's shoulders sagged. The battle went out of him. His knuckles turned white as his hands clamped on the table, holding on to the last bit of control he would ever possess. And then came the knockout punch. The judge's gavel came down once, booming like thunder. "This court believes the testimonies of Meri Brown, Christine Brown, and Janelle Brown to be credible, consistent, and irrefutable. This is not a criminal court, but it is a court of truth. And the truth is this: Kody Brown, you have been convicted, not by code, but by the very voices of the family you ruined." Gasps filled the room. Some cried, some clapped, some just sat in shock. The hugeness of the words crushed down on Kody, like a trap slamming shut. Robyn fell down beside him, her wails long and out of control. She grabbed his arm fiercely. But for the first time, Kody did not reassure her. His gaze was distant, empty, as if he were looking at the destruction of all that he had created, and knew it was lost forever. Meri, Christine, and Janelle all stood together, not in victory, but in release. They had been silenced for so long, split apart, manipulated. But today, their voices had been heard. Their suffering had been legitimized. And it was there that they felt free. The judge rose, the final words echoing from him. "This court is adjourned." The gavel cracked once more. The room boiled over into chaos. Journalists screaming questions, cameras popping, the gallery humming like a tempest. But through the din, the Browns themselves behaved differently. Kody sat immobilized, a hollow shell of the man who once described himself as a leader. Robyn held on to him, weeping, her world disintegrating, as she saw that her tears, her defenses, her tale, had all failed. And Meri, Christine, and Janelle, they exited together, not as sister wives, not as shattered women, but as survivors. And as the courtroom doors slammed shut behind them, one thing was certain: the verdict had been handed down. And it wasn't just Kody who had lost. It was the fantasy of the family he had falsely presented.